when we focus on the milestones we expect, we overlook the gifts that autistic children bring, and they have their own unique developmental assets that non-autistic children don't have, but we don't notice them because we're too busy looking for the the standard, you should achieve this by this age and this by this age. And even though they're blossoming these beautiful qualities, we're conveying the message, you're disappointing because you're not achieving these milestones at a given time. A lot of parents of autistic children are worried when their children aren't meeting the same milestones at the same time as their non-autistic peers. What would you say to those parents?
Yeah, I certainly know, Guy, that's a very that can be a very challenging circumstance for so many parents to be in. Understandably, parents are want the best for their children, want their children's development to unfold in a very healthy, positive way. And when parents get messages from professionals that their child is not developing typically, compared with a particular idea, right, or a standard of what development should look like, it can really set off a lot of anxiety and stress for parents and families. So I see that all the time. I think the first thing I would say is, I wish that the professional, well-intentioned, right, professional community would spend more time giving messages to parents that the most important thing is to really understand who your child is first and foremost. Understand the way your child is wired, understand the way your child grows, learns, develops, which is absolutely unique to your child. So even though we have these ideas about how development typically should go, what we're learning at this point in time is that there's a huge range that we may have underestimated in terms of a developmental pathway for every individual child. All children do not develop in the same way at the same time and meet the same milestones in the same way. Children are incredibly diverse in terms of their unique capabilities, their unique central nervous system. And there are children that can develop very differently or at different speeds, achieving different milestones at different times, and still have very wonderful positive outcomes in terms of good relationships, a good sort of productive, successful life in terms, whatever that might mean, in terms of having a job or education or all of those things. So I think what we're realizing is that we had a very narrow definition that said this is how every child should be developing. And what we're learning is that we have to really broaden that definition and help parents stress a lot less about their particular child's developmental path.
Because one, you're not going to be able to instill new skills in a child by worrying about them not having those skills, unless the assumption is that they don't have them because they're lazy or they're doing something wrong, which is rarely the case. And if that's conveyed to a child, or if a child more likely picks up on that, it's likely to be very damaging to their confidence. And it's like we said in the other conversation that we had about attachment parenting. If you give the child the space and a safe environment and a strong relationship and a sense that life is a nice thing, they're going to develop in the optimal way for them. And I guess it's for us to accept whatever that is. And just because a milestone's not reached at a certain time doesn't mean that milestone or a different milestone that addresses in the same sort of area isn't going to be reached later. I know, I think, as an autistic person myself, I think my parents were very worried that I missed a lot of milestones. But there's a lot of things that have come to me later in life. So I something like having this conversation 20 years ago in my life would have been unthinkable. I would have been garbling and throwing in totally, things that aren't easy for other people to connect to or relate to. So, it's never too late. Milestones happen at different times and in different ways. And the other thing is that when we focus on the milestones we expect, we overlook the gifts that autistic children bring, and they have their own unique developmental assets that non-autistic children don't have, but we don't notice them because we're too busy looking for the standard. You should achieve this by this age and this by this age. And even though they're blossoming these beautiful qualities, we're conveying the message, you're disappointing because you're not achieving these milestones at a given time.
Absolutely, Guy. That is so well said. And I think that what you just shared is really the heart of the message that I would want to give to any parent of a child that's received an autism diagnosis. Do whatever you need to do to calm down, trust that your child is going to develop according to their own, what they've been given, right? Their own brain and central nervous system and heart and body. It may not be in the same way or at the same speed as quote unquote neurotypical children. But what we are learning, what I continue to learn as a professional from the autistic community, from autistic adults in particular, is that many autistic adults develop skills, for example, the ability to use words or use language in communication much later in their development, and still develop it quite well. But again, if they are pushed and forced, and get the message from their caregivers that the way that they're developing naturally or the way that they're communicating naturally is wrong or is inadequate or something along those lines, I think their self-esteem also then suffers, right? Because they're getting a message that you're sort of you're not good as you are. So I think what you're spotlighting is so important. The most important thing for parents is to really focus on their children's strengths, right? And their children's unique ability, strengths. And sometimes if I have my own in my head as a parent, as a professional, if I have my own picture of what I think I should get a child to develop, right? In terms of, I think this is a good strength for you, the child, to have, that's very different. And then the child gets a message from me that who they are naturally is really not acceptable. And I think we've learned enough about mental health at this point to know that doesn't really support a child to flourish.